Made. Senator Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary. Just want to pick up a little bit what the chairman was talking about, the efforts this committee's made. I remember our hearing on May 21st where we had the counsel from Department of Defense and a counsel from Department of State. And we talked about an authorization for use of military force, and at that point the administration was saying they wanted to engage with the Congress. And then later on, I think July 23rd, a number of us did go down to the White House in the counsel's office, and we discussed that authorization. My recollection is two things from that meeting, is that the White House counsel was finding a somewhat tenuous connection to previous authorizations, and so they were looking and they were interested in having a new authorization. And also, I think I left that meeting, my impression was the ball was in the administration's court to draft something, and that's my question. After all that time, why? Just simply, why hasn't the administration sent us a draft proposal? Because it's really been pretty much the history, previous presidents, and I would think that would make sense. The Commander-in-Chief would kind of like to lay on the table the authorization he would want to pursue the actions that he believes are necessary to keep this nation safe. So why hasn't the President given us a draft? Because it would have cleared up so much confusion. So just simply answer the question, why?
Well, as I've said, I think we have a pretty good draft.
No, why hasn't the President sent a draft? Why didn't he write it up himself, or you, or as Secretary of Defense?
It's my understanding there have been about 7 meetings. And I don't know, I wasn't present in any of those meetings, but those 7 meetings have discussed the draft. The chairman himself said they went down and talked about the draft. There's no requirement for the President to send it up.
But wouldn't it make it a lot easier? Okay,
I don't know if it, but as I said earlier to Senator Rubio, would it have made life easier? Would it have changed the debate? It's the same debate. You have language in front of us, which we're now working with, and the President has said that by and large it's pretty good. This isn't the first time that the committee has exerted leadership to put the language together, AMF, that the President has asked for and welcomed.
Again, I won't get an answer. That's fine. The reason I think we need to review past authorizations is because I think there's a legitimate difference as to whether or not, for example, the 2001 authorization really does apply right now. And let me read why. It's all past tense. He's talking about nations, organizations, persons he determined planned, authorized, committed, or harbored. Those are all past tense. There's nothing in here talking about associated forces. It's kind of describing them. But there's a legitimate concern about whether or not that actually does authorize its current use. And again, my understanding in the White House, they seem to also be grappling with the tenuous connection between the current use of military force and that authorization. But I want to go back a little bit further, because I think exploring this language, exploring the history makes sense. World War I, World War II. We actually had a total of 2 declarations of war in World War I. We had 6 in World War II, and they were pretty open-ended. They gave the President the authority he needed to defeat the enemy. In World War I, it was a declaration of war against Germany, and this is what the authorization said: to bring the conflict to a successful termination. And even in the 2001 authorizations, the President is authorized to use all necessary and appropriate force. That's what past presidents wanted in terms of authorization, is the authority to be Commander-in-Chief and to accomplish the goal. Here's my question. Has President Obama deviated from the goal he stated to degrade and ultimately defeat ISIS?
Not in the least. What
is the goal of this process then? I mean, is it to have a bipartisan authorization? Is it to have members be able to put themselves on the record? Or is it to produce an authorization that gives the President the congressional authority to actually accomplish that goal?
Well, it's obvious, Senator, the purpose of the AUMF is to authorize in its new and modern context, its state-of-the-art context, the challenge that we now face with a very different kind of extended threat, if you will. And I think the discomfort that has been exhibited on both sides of the aisle with the reliance on 2001, which we believe absolutely withstands any judicial scrutiny whatsoever and is legitimate, but the discomfort that exists should be clarified. And the American people, the President believes, are owed a 2014 commitment, not a 2001.
I completely agree. And the other thing the American people are owed is for the President to draft what that authorization should look like, so we've got something to work from. And what I would also argue is, as well, is we need an authorization because this is a different kind of enemy. This isn't a nation state that it's going to be pretty obvious what it's going to look like when they're defeated. We need to have a discussion about what does defeat look like. We need to define that term, and I would also argue what we need is we need an authorization that's good not only for President Obama, but a future president, because I agree with President Obama. This isn't going to be a war or a conflict that ends quickly. So that's why I am looking from the Commander-in-Chief. I'm looking for what he believes he needs and what his successor or successors might need to grapple with and take the actions they need to take to keep this nation safe with this brand new, over the last decade or two, this brand new threat, not a nation state, but an ideology that wants to kill Americans.
President would agree we should, and that's exactly what we're trying to do.
Again, I would look forward to the draft because it would make this process just a whole lot easier.
Well, again, we're pretty close as we're sitting here. I think we just have to sit down and work through the differences. The President has said that in general terms, this is a pretty good.
Does the President really believe that ISIS or the new name Daesh will be defeated in 3 years? Does he really believe that's the case?
No, the President has said this is going to take a long time.
Why would we limit ourselves to a 3-year time period then? Well, why would you want to hamstring his successor having to come back before, I'm sorry, this dysfunctional body? Look, let's face it, we had this hearing in May of this year, and now we're back here in December. This is not going to be concluded with an authorization for the use of military force. We'll take a show vote, but this will not give President Obama the authority that he needs and that successors will need. Why would he even agree to a 3-year limitation? Is that a responsible thing for President to do?
Senator, first of all, look, it's hard to have the argument both ways the way you're trying. If it's dysfunctional, maybe then there's a real reason why the President didn't send it up. I think that's not the reason, and I don't mean to make fun of it. That's not the reason, and that's not where it is. The President, for 2.5 months now, we have been preoccupied in trying to focus on putting together the strategy, implementing the strategy, building the coalition, and doing what we've needed to do. There have been 7 meetings during that time. I don't know what happened at those meetings, but there have been 7 meetings.
Let me ask you, why not?
Well, let me just.
Why aren't you aware of what's happening in those 7 meetings?
Because I'm not in those meetings. Those are in the White House. That's White House counsel. I work.
They're not kind of giving you a briefing or kind of sending you a memo?
No, I think, Senator, let me just come to your other question, which I believe was you asked about the time frame. Would we limit it? Why would we limit it? And if you listen carefully to what I said is, I'm not in favor of that limitation without the ability to have the renewal, but I'm trying to balance. Look, what we're trying to do here, I think all of us, let's not get dragged down into a sort of, unnecessary debate here. We want to build the strongest vote possible. We want to see if we can meld the differences into something that's acceptable to both sides. That has often happened here historically, and certainly when I was here in '91 and other times when we did this, we did that. We ought to be able to do it now. There's a balance of interests. Now, some people have an interest in protecting the complete open-endedness of the presidential authority as they deem it to be given under the Constitution, and there are others here who, by virtue of experience and bad experience, want to have a little restraint, and they're trying to balance it. We think we're offering a way to try to figure out how you do that, which is to give a sort of fixed period of time during which you'll have the chance, the Congress, to take stock of it. So it's not purely open-ended, but also so it's a responsible process that it won't end unnecessarily. There'll be a review of some kind, and that's what we ought to sit down and work out. Well, how does that work? What's the appropriate way to do that? What's the trigger? So that there's a respectful assessment of where we are, of what's happening, of how it's been implemented, and that it isn't, in fact, open-ended and dangerous and dragging us on into an open-ended, quote, war. So I think that's what we're trying to balance. A lot of that comes out of the experience of Iraq or even Afghanistan. People are worried about it. They don't want it to be that again, and everybody is sensitive to that. So I think we're just trying to find the appropriate balance between those things. And I think, as I say, the chairman's mark is a good starting place, and we should work off of that.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you.